Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Now I'm sure I'm not on my own in the fact that I have lots and lots of scrap bits of paper, old 6x6 paper pads that I've had bits punched and taken away from them, scraps literally littering the floor. And I thought today that I would actually just try and do a little bit of tidying up, but in the same time create something using the bits and pieces that I found on the floor, in stashes, and just literally kicking about my work surface, and just see if I can create something in a kind of vintagey theme, because that's what kind of mood I'm in today, hence the dicky bow. So this is pretty much what I found kicking around my work surface, and a few bits and pieces that I picked up off the floor, like this image which I'd probably started to cut out but never actually got round to it. I was interrupted, so I thought I'd use this image in my art journal as my main focal point. And I've got some dictionary text, which is a scan of a dictionary page, which has been kicking around for a while. I've got a few pieces of ephemera from an old or one of my ephemera collections on my website. Again, I've got a circle cut out from the cartography set of digi-downloads on my website that was just kicking around. There's also a printed sheet from my classified digi-download set, which is also on my website. But I think the reason why I didn't use this one is because I think the ink was running out, because these aren't as dark as what they should be. So that's probably the reason why I never used it in the first place. And then I have this sheet of paper. Not sure what collection this is from. Already had some circles punched out of it, and I've also just done a couple more as well. And I think I'm going to use those circles in the page. So because I've got the circle from the cartography, I'm going to follow the theme through and maybe use some of those circles. Not sure what size or what side to use. I may use both actually. I may use the larger ones with the stripes and the smaller ones with the green, the green backing. And I'm going to do it in on a piece of the 300 GSM or £140 watercolour cardstock. That's from my Junk and Disorderly art journal. So I've taken the sheet out. So I think that is pretty much what I'm going to use to build up the page. I think starting with this as a background piece. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this down. I'm going to glue it all the way down, and then I'm going to go around the outside, probably with some paint, just with my finger, and try and blend that in, and then we can start building up our main image. So that's pretty much dry. I've also had a quick clean up on my craft station here because it was just getting a bit disgusting. Even for me, by my standards, it was still kind of dirty. This is still a little bit tacky, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my potting soil archivaling. I've already got the blending foam from another project that I did recently, and I'm just going to go around and grunge up those edges. Now, I'm aware that I didn't stick that down straight, but that's okay, that's fine. I'm not aiming for perfection here, so I'm just going to go all the way around with that ink blending foam just to darken those edges up a bit, kind of unify, detract the eye away from the fact that I haven't been perfectly straight. Once we've got all the other layers on as well, you probably won't notice it half as much. And the fact that it's no longer a stark white background will help too. Just keep on adding a bit more of that grunge into it. So that's starting to blend a bit more. A nice kind of grungy-ish border. Okay. So I'm just going to give that a quick blast with a heat gun, make sure it's all dry and it's no longer tacky. You can see it's still being picked up by my hand. And I'll also clear this out of the way as well. Okay, so that's pretty much as dry as it's going to get. I found my bricked stencil from TCW lurking under a pile of paper, so I thought, well, I'm going to employ you as well now. So I've just grabbed some burnt umber acrylic paint from Do Crafts. And I'm just going to add a little bit onto my craft mat, and I have a cosmetic sponge. And I'm just going to load up that cosmetic sponge and just add in around the edges, just to try and build up a bit of interest around the outside. It also helps to darken the page up. As you can see, we've started to get some nice detailing showing through. Do the same thing again at the bottom here. I'm putting some in here, but I know from what I want to use as the focal images that some of these are probably going to end up being covered up, but that's okay. It's not necessarily about what you can see, it's what you know is there. Yeah. Like that. I'm going to put a little bit more down here. Just to darken this edge up a little bit. Ooh. Okay, let's get that dried. Okay, we're all dried. I'm happy with the colour there. So time to bring in the sheet of dictionary text. Now, like I said, I know I'm going to cover most of this up. It's not necessarily what you can see, it's what you know is there. So I want to stick this down, and then I'm going to start covering and start adding some detail over the top of that too, using the same brick stencil, just to kind of tone it in with the rest of the page. So, but for this, I think I'm going to just stick it down using a collage glue stick, rather than go all out with a matte medium again. I don't want to add too much more moisture into the page. Not just yet anyway. This is the Ranger triangle collage glue stick. Which doesn't seem to be sticking at the edges. Okay, if there's a few wrinkles and bubbles, not particularly all that bothered. Okay, so as I said, bring back in that stencil. So I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to use that potting soil again. And then we can start breaking up those edges, just to add some of that interest. Background pattern. It just helps to kind of unify what we have. And then maybe a little bit over here. If you have a pattern that continues from one side to the other, I'm going from the dictionary page onto the Deakin, and you actually carry on the pattern, it helps to give that illusion that it's all inclusive. So it kind of melds and disappears into the background. One little trick when you're trying to make sure, or trying to make it that your page looks very cohesive, transferring and going across patterns is a really good way of doing it, because you've got that in the background, the bricks in the background, you've also got the bricks in the foreground now, so it helps to just blend everything together. Okay, so what have we got next? We've got the map. Okay, so I want to add that in as well, but using that leftover ink, I'm going to grunge up. I did say this was going to be a vintagey style, grungy kind of project today. Cool. And then I'm going to stick that in the background there. I'll just stick that down with a collage stick again. Pay particular attention to the edges. Right. Now there is the word explore just in the background there. That's actually part of the design for the page. So I'm going to do that so that it is actually straight, although it probably will disappear into what we add later anyway. Alright, so next, let's have a look at our chaps. So these are the three, well, let's just call them salubrious looking gentlemen. So what I need to do is I'm going to cut these out from the background. I already started obviously a while ago and never actually finished it for some strange reason. So I'm going to go away and cut these out, probably with a craft knife or obviously with a pair of scissors, depending on how my fingers work today. If I can't manage the scissors with my arthritis, then I'll just have to use a craft knife. So I'll be back as soon as I've cut these out. Okay, so they're all now cut out, but I've separated him from the other two. I'm going to separate them and have him separate and these two over here slightly off to a little angle. And I've got those circles which I also want to stick down behind them. So I'm just going to place them first because I want that one to kind of go there and ground him. I want that one to kind of go and ground him. And then I'm going to put that one there, which is going to kind of ground him. But because I want to create that triangle, kind of visual triangle, I'm also going to put one of those up there. And then using the smaller circles, I'll add one just behind his head there. I might actually put that so it links those 3 circles together there, and then the final one I'm going to add up there. Okay, I'm happy with the placements for those, so I'm going to peel off my gentleman, and then I'm going to stick these down. But before I do that, I'm going to just give them a quick going round with that potting soil, just to kind of unify the colours a little bit. Okay, now I've added that grunge around the edges, you can see it's all nicely starting to build up. So I'm just going to lay my chaps back down again, just to make sure I have still got the same position. Put everything back down in the right place. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Maybe move that up a little bit there. So now I'm okay to start sticking down all the circles into that background. So let's just remove the chaps. And for this, I'm going to use the Tombow Mono Liquid Aqua whatever glue, because it gives me just a little bit of wiggle room just to position it before it grabs. Do want this green one on top. Okay, now I'm just quickly going to lay them back down again, just to make sure I've got the right position for them. As long as come down maybe up there. Yeah, see, totally happy with him. And then I can just maybe adjust them slightly. Cool. So happy with those placements there. Make sure the glue's sticking down. Right, now I did have these 2 bits of ephemera, so let's add those in as well. And these will still go behind my main focal chaps, and we'll just use that glue again. So I want to stick that over there, so that's going to go behind my 2 guys. So you're not really going to see it, it just breaks it up. Maybe if we push it up a little bit, so it's just on the shoulders. Yeah, you can see it just poking round the outside. And then I'll do the same thing with this one over here. Happy with that. Perhaps I ought to have moved that down a little. No, because it's going to be too close to that. See, I'm second guessing myself here, and I shouldn't be. Okay, so next step. I need just to go around the edges of my chaps. So I'm going to try and find a brownish, so walnut stain, maybe vintage photo. Yep, old favourite. And then I'm just going to go around the edges just to darken up those white raw edges that you can see. So this is a little bit of a boring process, so I will get on with it and then I'll just jump to where I've finished. Okay, I've gone round the edges with that vintage photo, but I'm not particularly happy with it. So I think I'm just going to go around and just add a little bit of darkness into the image, just using my sponge, which I should have probably done to start off with. But you live and learn. Okay, so I've gone round and added some of that grungy potting soil archival ink. Yeah, got it all over my hands now. So what I'm able to do now is, because I want to actually stick these down completely, not just with the glue, I want to go over with a little bit of a glaze with some India ink later on. So I want to try and add some of this matte medium, because I've used archival inks and paints, acrylic paints, then there should be no bleed, theoretically. Oh, you hear Mr. Bentley bark then. That means he might need to go for a tinkle. So I may just need to just pop you on pause for a second and go down and let him out. So let me just go over these chaps first. He'll have to cross his legs for a second longer. There we go. I did print these on using a laser printer, so the chaps were printed using a laser printer. I could tell that just by looking at the print, even before I'd started this. Okay, so grab the heat gun, quick blast, and then I'll go let Mr. Bentley out for a wee-wee. Now that Mr. Bentley is sorted, my gentlemen are also dry. Now on the way back up, I spotted an old butterfly image that was just lurking in a pile of stuff. I just saw the tip sticking out, so I've actually cut it out, and that's given me a little bit of an idea of what I want to do to finish this project off now. I was going to go in one direction, and now I decided to go in a slightly different one. So I have my other chappy, so as I did with the others, I'm going to just grab my potting soil archival ink, and I'm just going to gently just go around just to add the same kind of unification of colour all the way, just to give it that nice little bit of blending in. And then there we go. And I'm going to do the same thing with the butterfly wings. The thing that made me spot these was the fact of the colours, the colours that we're using in the project. So if there'd have been blue butterfly wings, I probably wouldn't have even given them a second glance. Excellent. Right, let's pop that to one side. And then I'm going to stick these onto the back. So add a little bit of glue onto the back there, and then we should be able to position these just where we want them. And that gives me a little bit of wiggle room too. Add a little bit of glue just onto the back. I want to try and get my fingers stuck to it. And then we can stick him down right where we want him. Which was just there. Ooh. You get back under there, you. Love it. You can't beat a bit of whimsy. Brilliant stuff. Now, I want to add a coat of the gel medium, or matte medium I should say, over the top. Because it's going to create a nice seal and a protective barrier for when I bring out my India inks in a minute. All blends together quite well. Okay, let's get that dried off. Now that everything has had a few minutes to dry, I've brought out my Faber-Castell Artist Pip Pens, and I'm going to add some colour into this character here. So I'm going to use, first of all, the yellow, dark chrome yellow, and add that to his shirt. Now you can use your finger, like I've just done, or if you want to use something with a little bit more precision, or if you don't like getting your fingers dirty, you can use a Q-tip or a cotton bud just to blend and move that colour around. Of course, the beauty of doing that is that you have a little bit more control, but you've also got two ends, so you get two colours per tip. So I'll add a little bit of flesh tone in there, just a little bit subtler. And then I'm going to add some green to his jacket. The India ink, which is what these Faber-Castell Pip Pens are, while they're still wet, you can blend larger areas like I'm doing now with your finger, or with, like I say, a Q-tip or something like that. But when they're dry, they are permanent, which means that if you want to darken an area up, you can just go in and add a little bit more. As little or as much as you want. Looks a bit more like an Irish leprechaun now, doesn't he? With his green suit, or the traditional kind of look of an Irish leprechaun. Not wishing to be un-PC or appear racist in any way. Let's give him a green waistcoat as well. Might as well give him a full three-piecer. Let's do his hat too. There we go. I'm not colouring those two. There is a reason. You just have to wait and see. Okay, to finish off the project, I want to add a little bit of a quote, a little bit of a phrase on there. So I'm going to use my Dymo letter tag label maker. I've already printed out what I want it to say, selected the size. So I'm now going to print it. And then put the label maker to one side. Before I stick it down, I want to add some colour to it. So I'm just going to use the light yellow glaze pit pen, and I'm just going to go over that just to add a little bit of colour. So it's not stark white. I want to do this first so that I don't get any of that yellow onto the page. So that can go away. Where's that? A bit of a baby wipe just to remove it from my fingers. And then I'm just going to snip that a little bit just to make it a bit smaller. And then I'm going to add that just across the bottom. I think just there. And as the finishing touch, let's put those scissors away. Now, for some very strange reason, my video camera decided that it was going to drop the audio from this piece of video. I don't know why, just very strange. There's just one stretch of audio just while I'm adding the charcoal around the figures in the art journal page. That's completely missing from the soundtrack. It's just a complete missing block. It does come back towards the end just as I'm finishing, which is absolutely bizarre. So, as I was saying, these are a set of Derwent charcoal pencils, and inside the set there are two dark pencils, one light, one medium, two dark, one light, two medium, and a white charcoal one as well. I'd never seen a white charcoal pencil before, but these were given to me as a gift a while ago. I don't use them very often, but I just thought instead of using the Stabilo Ore pencil and activating it with water, that I would use the charcoal pencils instead. It was just a choice between one product or another. They work just as well, but I like the softness that these charcoal pencils give me around the figures to add shadows and that kind of depth. Kind of a soft shadow with the charcoal pencils. So I think these will come out a bit more in the future. So as I said, all I'm doing is just going around the bottom section of the cutouts of the gentleman and just adding a little bit of shadow around their feet, just to give them a bit of grounding onto the bottom part of the page, and then going over and around my word blocks, and then just in some areas where I think it could do with just darkening a little bit and making a tad softer. So I'm just looking at the page and then deciding where I want to add a bit more of that darker shade to it. So it's at this point when the audio starts to come back again. So I shall hand over to the original audio of the original video. So now I've added on my shadow. All that remains for me to do is to just sign and date. And I think I'll just grab that ink pad, just make sure we've got the right dates, and then I'm going to stick it just there. And then I'm going to grab a pen and then just add my little signature along the bottom. And then I'm going to call this page complete. So I hope you enjoyed watching that little impromptu page be made out of scraps of bits of paper and stuff that I had just lying around. So sometimes it's nice just to sit down and see where everything's going to take you and not have a real clear picture of where you're going to go. And until I actually saw those butterfly wings sticking out from between two other pieces of paper, I had no idea how this one was going to finish. So I think it turned out pretty well, and I'm very, very pleased with it. So I hope you enjoyed watching along. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again very soon. Bye for now.